What's up, folks? Casual Dad here with another Warhammer Combat Cards Warlord guide. Got it. And tonight we're going to talk about Specimen LV-655-BS, whatever that is, otherwise known as the Tervigon, or the Hive Mother, or whatever you want to call her. Mother of Swarms is the quest. Now, this is one of my absolute favorite warlords in my favorite faction. This is such a cool warlord, and I personally think probably the best, one of the best, if not the best, starter warlord in the game. If you are just starting out in the game, your biggest weaknesses are that you have a limited pool of cards, you have a limited number of card slots, and you have a limited number of points. So what the Tervigon does, and I'll go straight to her ability on this one, is you start the battle with a Termagant card in your deck, and that when it dies, you add it back. So it is a single infinite card. It is a card you will never ever run out of. In a Tervigon deck, you will always have more cards, which is amazing. And of course, the card's not good, but it doesn't start good. It actually gets quite good later, and we're going to see that when I actually play it. In addition to that, the Tervigon has quite a high health pool, comes in at a very high price point, which is unfortunate because you do have to watch out for Big Game Hunter, and no defensive abilities aside from the hit points, which are, again, fairly high, but not that high for 52 points. Then you've got all attack types, including Psychic, and the Psychic stands out in particular because you have Psionic Blast. So the Tervigon is also a really good starter warlord because that base trait is very good for clearing shields, and is one of the only warlords in the game that can clear off-lane cards to kind of finish a close end game. So if you're up against Acker and you give your all to take down both of his bodyguards to 5 hit points, the Tervigon is the only warlord who one-on-one will be able to kill them both before taking down the opposing warlord. So that's a really big perk of her, in addition to the free card. Now the downside, though, is that she is absolute Badruk bait. Badruk bait, not great against Helbrecht, does struggle against some others, but any deck where killable chaff cards are an advantage is really bad for the Tervigon because it's all killable chaff cards. So that is definitely kind of a thing to keep in mind. But still, really powerful card. I do have a basic deck that I really love, but we'll talk about it. So when I was starting out, I played all kinds of different matchups, all kinds of different things. You do want to be mostly range focused because we'll see the Termagant in a minute, and it is a ranged card. You can get around that and play with any attack type that you want, but you do want to emphasize durability and ideally a low card pool. Because when I was starting out with this, I had a full deck. I ran on like the most possible cards you can ever run, and the downside of that is that your draws are random, right? So the more cards you have to draw from, the less likely you are to draw your Termagant at any given time, and the more time you're spending losing quote-unquote real cards versus losing your free card that you can lose any number of times. And if you're just losing your free Termagant, your deck, even a small deck, can last basically forever. Whereas if you're losing your non-Termagant cards, the deck will go through very quickly. But the cards that I really stuck around early on, target acquired, this guy is a really strong piece. He is very flimsy though, so you do want to watch out for him. And then some of the others. One of the really good ones that I used to lean on a lot was this guy here, but the two strongest cards for the Tervigon and some of the strongest cards in Tyranids in general are these two right here. This guy coming in now with shields, which is awesome, but mostly just having good hit points, okay melee, but having a very high psychic attack and also having Psionic Blast is a great combo with the Tervigon itself and also the free card that does have precision shot. So you're putting a lot of pressure out even when you're not actively attacking, and it does have Psychic, which is a really powerful attack type. And then of course you have this guy, who is range focused, has the defensive buff of having a ton of hit points and also having shields, and also comes in with a very high ranged attack. So those are the two that I would reach for first in my Tervigon deck, if you have them. If you don't, look for some combination of offensive output, range being better than not, and hit points for whatever price point you've got. But then also you should have a bunch of extra points to play with because you do want to keep it at as minimal of a deck size as you can. With, I believe, the minimum in a Tervigon deck, I believe you can run 2 cards, but probably you don't want to do that. I did netlist this. I had someone who told me a really great build for this, and he used this guy. And then I forget what the 4th card was. So it was these two, the Hive Crone. These two, the Hive Crone, and then one other card that made up the other 5 points. I swapped it for this guy. He's got Barrage, which is great, also has Fear. So it was that defensive thing that really switched me over to it because I found that the Hive Crone died very quickly often. I really liked the Barrage, and this was just a great piece, and I just used this guy in a game where that Fear came in clutch. Obviously low level, but as he levels up, he's going to be a much scarier piece in this deck and in general. Look at this thing, like your max level fear is a monster. Does all tick all the boxes of having high hit points and fear to stay around a long time, which really helps this thin deck survive. And then his ranged attack comboed with that Psionic Blast, with the barrage with the Psionic Blast, will do a whole lot to clear boards and clear through an opposing deck. So that's the basic gist. We're going to go ahead and play it. And a lot of the tips, I really like this guy too. I've used him a lot, but he is fairly squishy. A lot of the tricks with, and now that we've completely revamped the Tyranid faction, this guy is one I would certainly look at closely, because having target acquired in this deck is excellent. I may shuffle points around in to get him instead of one of this guy and one of these, but we'll see. But for Tervigon, most of the advice I can give is based on play. In terms of deck building, again, it's a very small deck with your maximum possible ranged and or melee or psychic and hit points. And since looking at the Tyranid collection, that basically means ranged. Because you can do melee, but the melee cards in Tyranids are not that great, and that doesn't synergize at all with the deck. Go ahead and do that here. And right off the bat, I have a free card that was there right away. Because I have such a thin deck, I always know that's going to be one of my first cards. And we're going to go about this guy in here. And I was able to drop him to deal with an offensive threat, so that's my defensive card. And just to look at the Tervigon, we'll look at him again when I redeploy him, because he's about to die. Because he does die, which doesn't matter, and it's really good against a Greyfax deck, because it does, Greyfax has no way to really clear those cards, aside from Barrage or Sonic Blast, whatever. But he's got Precision Shot, so he goes in, does damage, and then if he dies, so what? You've got an infinite supply of these things, which is so good. So he's got fear on him, so try to ignore that. But starts with about 50 hit points, 40 to 50 something depending on level. Starts with a fairly low ranged attack, but this one does 30 when he's not hit by fear, and has Precision Shot, which actually does quite a bit of damage, especially as you're able to keep dropping it and keep dropping it and keep dropping it. It is pretty wild to see just how much damage these are able to put out. And again, just to have them, this option to just keep pulling from it is incredible to deal with a key threat. So yeah, again, amazing starting Warlord. If you're starting out at the game and you're looking for which Warlord to pick up first, I strongly recommend the Tervigon if you have the option. That's a problem. Yuck. I don't have any good options there. Hicks being still one of the absolute best cards in Servants of the Emperor, so this is going to be a challenging game. I'm really glad to be able to show this one because, again, I am actively laddering my Tyranids. And so being able to show a tough matchup here, this is a 2.6k Greyfax deck, and we've got decent leveled cards here. Also someone who bought the Battle Pass for Servants. But you can really see how that fear is very, very important in this deck build. Ooh, gross. Okay. So it's my turn, and that guy's about to go away anyway. I'll go ahead and do this. And my Psionic Blast plus that Precision Shot should be enough to take him out. It is. Excellent. And what do we do? So Taunt is up, which will actually keep me alive here, so we'll go ahead and do this. Not the best. Oh, no. Okay. Whoops. Probably going to lose that. Okay, and now at the end game. Warlord's on the board. I still have a fairly full deck, but it is getting thin really quickly, especially with this guy's melee. And he's got rank 2, so I may be able to keep the guy alive. Absolute key piece. Always keep your Termagant, unless you're really winning. If it's a close game, always keep your Termagant in a place where it's going to die, like I said before. Because if your Termagant is not in any danger, where it can just puddle around indefinitely, it's not keeping any of your other cards alive. So you want to be redeploying the thing, getting that Precision Shot, and making sure that he is impactful in the game and able to screen for your other cards, so you are actively trying to get your Termagants killed. I mean, that's not really the goal, but, I mean, that is the secondary goal of the Termagant, is to make sure it is dying instead of your other cards. Huge advantage being the ability to constantly be able to redeploy your cards, which is incredible. And then, of course, being able to soak damage. So this is a 4 bodyguard deck, and I still have a whole bodyguard in there who hasn't hit the board. And that's wipe. That is the Tervigon. You got to see a good Tervigon matchup and how you deal with an overpowered opponent like Greyfax. and how the dancing back and forth really helps out, and how the Tervigon can be very powerful. But it also is a razor's edge where it's one of the most decision-challenging warlords, where there are a lot of ways where you can mess up a game, where your win rate could be 80%, and then you leave for a week and come back the following week, and suddenly your win rate is 30%, just because of in-game mistakes that are very easy to make if you're kind of rusty. So yeah, Tervigon, super cool, really like it. Amazing. Ooh, Zodgrod, interesting. Okay. This is a great matchup, sort of. So with Zodgrod, he's trying to get me to kill his weaker cards first. And one way I can play this is to not kill his... One way I can play this is anytime he drops an 8-point card, I can drop a Tervigon in front of it, so it takes forever for him to kill... for the 8-point card to die, while my heavier pieces are dealing with the guys on the left. Now the risk there is that I don't lose my... Oh, Meatfish, hang on, I know this guy, he's in my clan. The downside there is that that will mean my Termagant is not dying, which I just said is a really important piece of the play. So we're going to gamble this a little bit. I may regret it very quickly. But with any luck, even that 9-point card is able to take down my Termagant fairly quickly, or I accidentally kill it, and then something scarier comes in place. I can't avoid it now, I gotta kill him. Alright. I cannot wait to get this guy higher level. This is such a good card. And they're getting their buffs. I already killed the taunt, so I've killed some fairly squishy stuff. It's a deep deck, so I'm expecting there's a lot of... Oh, no. Okay. And that is one you don't want to see with buffed up stats. Especially since it already has Berserk, so it's already building up additional buffed up stats already. Not great. And even as I kill these guys, it's going to get even scarier. The good news, though, is... this guy has no kind of overflow damage, so I can just do this stupidness and just sort of plink the thing down. Now, that's always a gamble too, because if he has any other power cards in this deck that really hit incredibly hard, but it's okay, I'll plink this guy. So that was a lucky break, and that's another case where both the Barrage and the Psionic Blast really come into play, because that cleared some of the screener cards, and then Barrage is able to finish off one of the other cards so that this guy didn't take the hit. What's this thing? Maleceptor. Maleceptor? God, crazy new names. And so that was not great. But I'm getting there to the Warlord. This guy still has plenty of shields. And then, of course, that's level dependent. Having the shield is something that definitely will take some levels, but you can still play him or something similar, rely on regen or Medicae instead of shields as you level up, because the decks you're going to play against are a lot less scary at lower level as well. But this is a pretty scary Wartsnaga deck. And I have now pulled Wartsnaga himself, who's going to have scary stats because he's got max bonus going on here, but not that scary. And then you can see this constant pressure. You got the precision shot, you have the Psionic Blast, and then you just have this wall of stuff that never gets any smaller because you're constantly cranking out additional cards. But again, I've had two really good matchups, back to back. Now Greyfax is a bit of an issue because you have to slog through stuff, and there is no safe place to put your power cards while you're letting your squishies take the brunt of the hits. Like, you saw me sort of dance around that decision a couple times, especially with the two target cards. Badrick, of course, being an absolutely atrocious matchup, and Helbrecht being very problematic. But these two matchups were decent, but still a lot of it was the strategic play of positioning what, when, and choosing where to feed my Tervigons versus where to take the haymakers. Like, putting the big shooter gun across from that Deft Dread was a risky play, but it was the way to clear the deck. So, there you have it. That is the Tervigon. There's a lot more to go into there. That is, again, one of my favorites, and I love talking about the Tervigon. So if you have any questions, just say the word, and I'll talk more about the Tervigon in a heartbeat. Anyway, that's it. Until next time.